So let's get to the safeties. Okay. This is the wild card. I think this is going to be the most interesting part about this breakdown. Okay. When I look at the safeties, obviously what stands out is you had at one point you had Eric Collette there, did a pretty decent job. Daniel Thomas, Avante Maddox, Jalen Mills at one point, Arthur Millette. Um, uh, you know, you had Brian Branch and Kerby Joseph, obviously, but Brian Branch only played in 12 games, which is pretty good. Played 95.7% of playing time. And then you had Kerby Joseph, who only played in 6 games. And, the crazy thing about the whole situation with Kerby Joseph and his injury, right? I felt like the offense, for whatever reason, if you're a Lions fan, uh, offenses picked on when Kerby Joseph went out. I thought offenses went at Detroit. Like they didn't have to look away. They didn't have to make these, oh, I'm gonna look over here, I'm gonna pass it over here, try to bait, try to, look at, not have Kerby read their eyes, right? And then when you had, Brian Branch go down, I thought that was a huge tipping point to the season because obviously you've seen the run defense absolutely take a crap after he left. And I don't think that's a non-correlation. I think that is a correlation. When you think about what Brian Branch was able to do as the Detroit Lions, one of their key players, he had 35 stops. 35 stops. He had 19 pass rushes. He had 9 hustle stops. He had 9 quarterback pressures, 2.5 sacks, which would have been top on the defense. He allowed 271 yards total. His quarterback rating was 89.3, which is not terrible, but it's not great either. So I kind of take it away from what the safeties were able to do, and I go, look, the safeties, it felt like when Kerby went down, there was an obvious difference in the way that this team played. This defense looked a lot different. And obviously you can point back to the defensive line and you could say, look, the defensive line wasn't that great. But when Kerby went down, it seemed like quarterbacks had an easier time going through reads. I don't know if you thought the same thing, but that's kind of what I thought. And when we look at the coverage grades in terms of on Pro Football Focus, like Brian Branch was 4th on the team. He had the 4th highest. Okay. Not really great. He had 9 penalties. His reception percentage was 56.8. He allowed 301 yards. And he had 7 forced incompletions, 4 touchdowns against. Okay. So that's not great. But when you look at Kerby Joseph, and why I say what I say is when you look at what Kerby Joseph was able to do, Kerby Joseph, in his 6 games that he played, he was targeted 9 times, gave up 5 passes for 62 yards. His reception percentage was 55.6. Okay. And then you add on top of it, you lose Kerby, you lose Brian Branch, you don't have Terrion Arnold, and we'll get to the cornerbacks in a minute, but it felt like it was like a mea culpa of everyone, right? Kerby goes down, Branch goes down, Terrion Arnold's down, and then DJ Reed, he never seemed normal after the injury. Like he had that injury that he had, it never seemed normal. And when I look at it from that perspective, like I'm just going to be honest with you, when Kerby went down and then Branch went down, it was a big time mess. And I think we all felt Amik Robertson was going to be the guy that could potentially help this team, and I think Amik did a damn good job being forced into a role that wasn't really meant for him. He's not meant to be on the outside. And then you throw Rocky Sin into a starting role, or it never really was healthy on that back end, and it felt like that. Now, if you had a pass rush that was dominant and you had depth, maybe you could have forced some plays. But when the safeties went down, when Kerby went down, there was an obvious difference in the way quarterbacks played the Detroit Lions, an obvious way. And I look no different than, you know, Kerby was in his 6 games. He had 2 stops. He had 4 stops. So he had nearly had a stop per game. He had 18 tackles, and he was just really, really great, really, really great. And it was very, I would say, you missed the role of Kerby Joseph. You missed him a lot. And so the safeties, it's going to be very interesting to see what we get out of it. Okay. And I'll leave it. I say it like this because we don't know the health of Kerby Joseph. I think the Kerby Joseph health is a total wild card. Is he healthy? Is he not healthy? I don't think the Lions really know. I don't think podcasters or beat writers really know. We're all guessing at this point. And if Kerby Joseph is indeed hurt and is indeed on a time clock, we talked about what David Chow said last week, which I don't really put much emphasis into what David Chow thinks because he lost his license with the California. I'll leave that like it is. But I would like to hear what Brad Holmes thinks. And is this an obvious need of position? Is this a need of position in the NFL draft? Is this a need of position in free agency? This is the major sticking point right here of the season. Obviously, Brian Branch, he might make it back for training camp, but I imagine that he'll start on the PUP list. When you go down this rabbit hole, they're gonna need some safety help. So they might need some cornerback help. We'll get to that in a minute. But again, it's very, very important that they go out there and you think about all the things that potentially could go wrong. If Kerby Joseph makes it back, fine. If Brian Branch is fine after training camp, you miss him for 4 games, he comes back, fine. But the reality of the situation is there's a total wild card in the safety position. Do you go into free agency and do you make a decision? I look at the free agents that they have out here, and I'll go kind of by position. Okay, so at safety, I want to see who's available, and we'll see who's available. I'm gonna go. You got guys like Jalen Thompson. You got Kevin Byard, who's a free agent. Donovan Wilson, Tony Adams, Nick Cross from Indiana, Andrew Wiegard from Jacksonville, who I like. He's a good tough defender. Malofanwu is also a free agent. PJ Locke from the Broncos, MJ Stewart, Darnell Savage, obviously Daniel Thomas from Detroit is a free agent. But the free agent list isn't very deep. Okay. Once you get past a certain number of people, it gets a little bit murky. And when you look at, players in the draft, like if we're looking at players in the draft, like who could be available for the Detroit Lions at their pick? Like who could be available, right? I think that's the most interesting thing. I look at a guy like, when you look at safeties in the draft, like there's a couple of safeties that come to mind, in my opinion. I like the kid from TCU, Bud Clark. I think he's a great player. Obviously, he has a good forced incompletion rate of 17.1%, a pretty low missed tackle rate. He only missed 9 tackles in 2025. He missed 6 in 2024. He spent some time in the slot, spent some time in the box, spent some time deep. He's kind of like you kind of fit in as like a guy like Brian Branch. I think that would be interesting. You look at a guy like Cole Wisniewski, who I did see PFF put to Detroit. His missed tackle rate's pretty high. His forced incompletion rate is pretty low. Not a guy I would really look into. I mean, if Caleb Downs is there, but Caleb Downs is a top 5 pick. There's also a kid from Toledo, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, who he's a total ball hawk. He is a guy who forces incompletion at a 33.3% clip. He has a missed tackle rate of 15.5. He had 13 missed tackles last year. Just a great player. He had a lot of he was his passer rating when allowed was 50.3. His forced incompletions, he had 5. He only gave up 1 touchdown a year and 2 interceptions. So another guy you could look into. I think the safety crop for the NFL draft is a little bit, it's not as great as you would want it to be. So look, there's a lot of places that this Detroit Lions team can go. There's no doubt about it. But when we look at, the wild card of Kerby and Brian Branch, like there's a there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and that's how it goes. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in those avenues, because this is a total wild card at the safety position. It's a total wild card. So we'll see what happens at that safety position. Does Kerby come back? That's a key point. Does Kerby come back and be healthy? That's a main point right here. And we just don't know. I feel like the whole offseason of the Detroit Lions up until this point is stuff we don't know. We don't know if Decker is going to retire. We don't know if Kerby Joseph is going to be all right. We don't know the prognosis and where Brian Branch is in his injury. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a new offensive coordinator. There's a lot of unknowns, but I think the biggest unknown that can hit Detroit is Kerby Joseph. Like if Kerby Joseph cannot play in 2025 or 2026, and he can't stay healthy at a good pace, then it's gonna be tough. Unless, of course, you make your safety a priority or you make your defensive line a priority. It's going to have to happen. And like I said with the defensive line last week, this is going to be on Brad Holmes to build this roster back up. He built the 3rd best roster in the NFL up when we were doing it last season. ESPN and The Athletic ranked the Lions the 3rd best roster in the NFL. And when you lost Kerby Joseph, when you lost Brian Branch, I felt like that was a huge, huge tipping point. And it was a huge point of the season. So we'll see what this Lions safety room is like. There's a lot of unknowns. But I think, a guy like Avonte Maddox, I would bring back. Thomas Harper was pretty good, but they're depth guys. Like if Brad Holmes feels like Kerby Joseph isn't going to be right, Brian Branch is going to take a little bit of time. They need to get the right reinforcements. And if we go into week 17 and we have 4 starting safeties, that's great for depth.